48 hours after my sister told me I was too old to fly, a bellhop in white gloves was pouring chilled coconut water beside my private plunge pool while my family gaped from the budget wing across the lagoon. I raised my glass to them, the ocean lighting up like liquid pewter behind me, and that's when Delia finally understood that leaving me at home had been her most expensive mistake. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Vera. I'm 64, a grandmother twice over, and I'm old enough to know a few things about how people behave when they think you have nowhere else to go. I knit fast when I'm angry, I bake bread when I'm sad, and when I'm insulted, I book flights. It started on a Tuesday. My sister Delia and her brood were sprawled in my living room, half watching a travel vlog and half pretending not to notice the suitcases by the door. I'd been told for months that we were all going to Ocean's Azure, a sprawling resort on an island you can only reach by ferry or a private catamaran if you're feeling fancy. It was supposed to be a family reset, my daughter Nina and her husband, my son Leo when he could get away from the hospital, Delia with her husband Roy and their grown kids, and me. I'd taken to practicing with a carry-on just to prove I still remembered how to maneuver an airport. Age is only a number until someone makes it a sentence. Where should I put my passport so I don't forget it? I asked, holding it up. Delia didn't look away from the TV. About that, she said, and there was that light, airy tone she uses to introduce something sticky. We've been talking, Vera. Traveling at your age is complicated. The stairs at the villa. The heat. The long flight. You know how your ankle swells. My ankle swells because you feed me pretzels with too much salt, I said lightly. Roy coughed into his fist. The airline has been packed lately. It was impossible to find a seat for you in our section, and we didn't want you crammed in coach alone. We figured you'd be more comfortable at home. You can water our orchids. I blinked once. You canceled my ticket. It's for your safety, Delia said, with that smile she wears like clear nail polish. You'll have a better time here. We'll call every day. Besides, Nina and Leo are coming later. Flights didn't line up. On the coffee table lay an itinerary with my name whited out. Literally whited out. I could still see the shadows of letters like a chalk outline under the glossy paper. My knitting needles stopped mid-loop. Say it plain, I said. Delia did. You're already old, Vera. It's not a judgment. It's math. You can't fly 12 hours and schlep luggage through ferry transfers. We love you. That's why we made the tough call. That word, old, landed like a coin in a jar that had been stacking dimes for years. Old, when I offered to host every holiday. Old, when they needed a babysitter at midnight. Old, when someone wanted a ride to DMV because their car mysteriously didn't start. Old enough to be useful. Too old to be included. Leo arrived straight from a night shift to return my slow cooker, eyes bruised with exhaustion, and kissed my temple. You good, Ma? I'm perfect, I said. And I meant it to sound cheerful, but my voice wobbled. Nina texted that her boss had pulled her into a launch and that she'd meet them midweek if she could swing it. Delia squeezed my fingers and looked like a woman performing concern for an audience. You'll have the house to yourself. Rest. Maybe go through the storage room? Toss those old linens. Treat yourself to a little something. What little something? I asked. She exchanged a look with Roy. We were going to surprise you, but we've been saving for a family car for you to use. A nice one. But it's silly to buy it before you prove you still like driving long distances. Let's see how you manage the week alone, and then we'll talk. The needles clicked again, fast as rain on a tin roof. You were going to give me a car, I said. A good one, Roy added, as if the adjective would dress the slight. In the end they left in a swirl of sunscreen and rolling luggage. I waved from the porch, because manners are the only thing between us and chaos. Then I shut the door, leaned my forehead against it, and counted backward from 10 like Leo taught his patience. At 5, the anger slid into place, not hot, but diamond clear. I boiled water for tea and wrote a list on an index card because lists feel like control. Call the airline, call someone who owes me a favor, call that travel agent whose nephew I helped get into nursing school, call the house sitter with the tattoo of the fox on her wrist. And at the bottom, underlined twice, Stop asking permission. The airline agent apologized in a way that told me Delia had used the phrase, medical reasons. My seat had been canceled and part of the fare issued as a credit onto Delia's card. But Miss Calder, the agent said, you have a free companion voucher and a gazillion miles. And, you have status we don't see often. Did you know? I did. Once upon a time, before grandbabies and casseroles, I flew for work setting up patient family navigator programs at hospitals. I had the scars and the perks to prove it. By sunset, I had a seat on a flight that left at dawn. First class. A name on a list for a seaplane transfer. A private villa with a plunge pool, an outdoor shower framed by hibiscus, and a butler named Matteo who, according to the agent, treated his guests' birthdays like national holidays. I paid for everything with a card I hadn't used in years, not because I was hiding money from my family, but because it just never occurred to them that I had it. It was the card for what I'd planned to do that month, buy the family a new car. Delia's car rattled like a shopping cart and Roy's pickup drank gasoline like soda. I'd been quietly test driving sensible hybrids. I intended to put a big red ribbon on a dark blue one and say, "Here, we share." But the ribbon might as well have been a noose on my own throat. I tore up the brochure. My house sitter texted back within minutes. Got it, Miss V. I'll feed those plants a symphony. Good for you. At midnight, our group chat pinged with photos from the airport. Delia with sunglasses bigger than her eyebrows, Roy making a kissing face toward a plastic flamingo by the gate. Love you, sis. Delia captioned it. Rest and be cozy. At 4, I buttoned a crisp linen shirt, tied a scarf the way my mother taught me, and called the cab. The driver was a woman my age with silver braids. Where to? She asked. The beginning, I said. Airports have a smell, coffee you don't really want, perfume wafting from duty-free, the faint static of departures and reunions. I watched the board flip letters and smiled like a teenager who just passed a note. In the lounge, a young woman offered me a seat by the window and told me I reminded her of her grandmother. Is she 64 and on a mission? I asked. The girl grinned. She is 72 and unstoppable. So yes. On the plane, a man in a suit asked if I needed help with my bag. Thank you, I said. But I lift heavier than this when my sourdough rises too high. I slept. I dreamed of the island as if I'd been there before, light the color of good butter, water like a million shattered sapphires, palms whispering gossip to one another. When I opened my eyes again, my anger had mellowed into something better, mischief. The seaplane skimmed the surface like a fingernail across a drum. A staff member met me at the dock with a cool towel and a tray of pineapple skewers. Miss Vera, he said, like greeting a queen. Welcome to Ocean's Azure. Matteo is waiting. The golf cart zipped along a path lined with bougainvillea. We passed the budget wing first, nice enough, clusters of low buildings around a big rectangle of pool crowded with floaties shaped like donuts. Families stacked like nesting dolls. And there, at the edge of the crowded pool, skin gleaming with sunblock, was Delia. Even from a distance, I recognized her resort posture, chin lifted, nose slightly wrinkled at anything that didn't look like a brochure. She'd found the place where she could be seen without having to see. She didn't recognize me. Why would she? I was wearing a hat, and she was very busy being disappointed that the pineapple garnish on her drink was not symmetrical. The golf cart paused at a fork, as if the island itself were asking me which path I intended to take for the rest of my life. The driver smiled. To the villas? To the very end, I said. The one with a view no one believes is real. My villa swallowed the ocean. The bed looked like a cloud that had given up on being in the sky. The plunge pool winked at me like an invitation. Fresh flowers breathed spice into the air. A small plate waited with a handwritten card. Welcome, Miss Vera. I hear you like pastries. Try the passion fruit tart. Matteo. He tucked a single edible flower into the glaze. I ate half the tart before I remembered pride. Then I ate the other half because pride is no match for passion fruit. Matteo arrived like a soft breeze, moving the way people move when they've trained themselves to be a step ahead. We have you in the Mariner's Villa, he explained. Private path to the sunset bluff. Outdoor tub. A telescope if you want to count constellations. I took the liberty of booking you the seaweed wrap this afternoon. The spa has a cold plunge that outsmarts time. Do you also offer packages for sisters who think they can make decisions with my name? I asked. Mateo's mouth twitched. We offer perspective. It's complimentary. The day poured itself around me. I swam, I exhaled. I remembered the way my body felt when it was mine. I sat at the edge of the pool and watched the water remind itself it was ocean. I ordered room service not because I couldn't go to the restaurant, but because I liked the theater of a silver dome lifted at my door. Lobster with lime butter. A salad that was mostly herbs pretending to be leaves. Warm rolls that split like secrets. At 4, when the sun leveled its eyes with mine, I walked down the path to the sunset bluff. Couples gathered in whispers. A family posed with matching hats. And at the far end, wielding a selfie stick like a baton, was Delia's daughter, my niece Tasha, instructing Roy and Delia to lean left. We need the lagoon in the back, not the compost bin. Mom, you're blinking. Dad, stop chewing. Aunt Vera would love this, she said, and then stopped, as if a ghost had tugged the back of her shirt. Would she? Delia asked, pinching her straw. I'm sure she's napping. I took off my hat. The wind touched my hair like an old friend. Tasha spun first, because her eyes are quick. She opened her mouth, closed it, then squealed. Grand Aunt Vera? Roy whipped around and stared as if he'd seen a bird carrying a suitcase. Delia's face did a troubling thing. For a second, she looked 8 years old again, caught pocketing cookies before dinner. Then the calculation returned like a tide. You made it, she said. How? How did you make it? I flopped my arms and followed the scent of bad decisions, I said, kissing Tasha's cheek. Hello, sweetheart. Show me the lagoon. Roy recovered first, because he has practiced being affable at barbecues. Well, what a lovely surprise. Isn't it? I said, and smiled at the horizon like it had texted me something scandalous. Delia didn't move. She pulled the corners of her mouth up as if they were handles and smiled over to me. You should have told us. We would have rearranged. You did, I said. You rearranged me right out of my seat. She swallowed. We were worried. About what? The heat. The crowds. The villas have stairs. I'm in the Mariners, I said casually. It's all on one level. And there's a butler who knows how to make a tart that just saved a life. Which life? Tasha asked, delighted. Mine, I said. From a very small, edible sadness. Roy peered toward the far end of the resort. The Mariners? Isn't that the one past the infinity pool? With a hammock that looks like a magazine cover? That one is expensive. The word you're searching for, I said, is worth it. That night, while Delia and Roy sought out the dinner buffet, free drinks with wristband, Mateo set a table on my patio with candles in glass cups. The sea exhaled, the moon polished the surface, and a cellist I hadn't asked for tucked herself in the shadows like a secret. A few of us play in the evenings for guests who feel like main characters, Mateo said. You look like you could use a soundtrack. He'd invited the chef to make me something off-menu, which turned out to be a stew so delicate it tasted like a story whispered in the kitchen by someone's grandmother long ago. I ate every spoonful and thought about the years I'd turned down offers because I didn't want to be a bother. The cellist eased into a song that made even the palm fronds hold still. Around 9, my phone lit up with our family group chat. Nina, Ma, Delia posted you? Are you there? Please say yes. Leo, you absolute legend. Sleep. Hydrate. Wear sunblock. Send photo of setup. Tasha had uploaded a shaky video of me taking off my hat at the bluff. The comments. A collage of emojis and shock and delight from cousins and neighbors, and one old friend who wrote, "Good for you, V." Finally, Delia didn't text. She arrived at my villa the next afternoon, crisp in a white cover-up that did not plan to get wet. Roy trailed behind carrying a beach bag large enough to smuggle secrets. He set it down as if it might explode. Mateo let us in, Delia announced, already scanning the space. She nodded at the plunge pool, the daybed, the view that swallowed sound. It's nice. It's obscene, Roy said under his breath, then jolted when he realized he'd said it out loud. Obscenely nice, Delia corrected. Are you comfortable? I'm incandescent, I said. Would you like coconut water? Mateo insists it cures everything. We're fine, she said, though she licked her lips when she saw the sweating glass. We were thinking we could all go on the glass-bottom boat tour together tonight. Family time. You know how islands like to separate guests by category. By budget? I asked kindly. She colored. By interests? I'm booked, I said, consulting a card where Mateo had written my weekend tidy script. Seaweed wrap this morning. Debrief snorkel at noon with a marine biologist who can identify fish faster than a magician. Sunset sail on a private catamaran at 6. Apparently the crew bakes pizza on board. Tomorrow, helicopter over the limestone arches, then a cooking class with a woman who makes dumplings like lullabies. Delia blinked. Private catamaran? Small group, I amended. 6 guests. 7 including me. Roy clutched the beach bag. The catamaran is extra. Everything in this life is extra if you weren't invited, I said. Delia circled to the edge of my pool and studied her reflection as if it might tell her where she'd ceded ground. I'm happy for you, she said. Truly. I just wish you'd told us you were coming so we could coordinate. We're in, well, the deluxe garden rooms. It's practical. Closer to the kids' club. I like practical, I said. It keeps the lights on. But sometimes the lights need to shine on you. What does that even mean? She asked, mock laughing. It means I'm done being the lamp. That evening on the catamaran, the sky rinsed itself from gold into a color you can only call hush. The crew tossed a rope to the dock, the pizza oven exhaled, and I stood at the bow like a woman in a movie. Another couple took photos. A child hissed, "Look, a dolphin." The fin cut water and vanished like a comma in a perfect sentence. The next morning, I went to the spa to meet the seaweed wrap. A woman named Rena wrapped me in green silk and told me about her grandmother who had never seen the ocean until she was 70. She said the sea looks like forgiveness, Rena murmured. She touched it and cried. My grandmother believed salt water fixes everything, I said. Tears, sweat, or the sea. Smart woman, Rena said. I emerged flushed and buoyant. When I passed the resort's central restaurant, I saw Delia at a table by the railing, stirring her iced tea with the kind of ferocity that turns spoons into questions. Tasha waved me over. Come sit. Mom's teaching the waiter how to build a salad. The waiter smiled with brave eyes. I can't stay, I said. I promised Mateo I'd pick a snorkel mask before the boat leaves. But I brought you something. I slid a little pink box to Tasha. Bonbons filled with a mango cream that could make a rainy day apologize. Tasha hugged the box to her chest like a secret. Aunt V. I love you. Delia watched the exchange the way a cat watches someone else get the cream. I think it's wonderful that you're splurging, she said. You deserve it. I know, I said gently. Roy cleared his throat. It can't be cheap. It's not. Then, how? Delia's smile was all porcelain, no teeth. You didn't, I hope, do anything rash? I rested my elbows on the table and leaned in. I was going to buy the family a new car this month, I said, level and calm, like reading a recipe. A nice one. I'd planned the color and the bow. But I changed my mind. I'd rather spend that money on myself. Tasha gasped as if I'd just set down a jewel. The waiter made a small sound of joy disguised as a cough. Delia's spoon clinked against the glass, a metronome for envy. You were going to buy a car? Roy blurted. For us? For US, as in family, I said. So no one would argue about whose turn it was to pick up the kids from soccer or take Aunt Margot to her appointments. But it occurred to me that a car would mostly carry other people to places they wanted to go. And I looked out to the slice of ocean glittering like good gossip. I want to carry myself. Delia tried to smile. It looked like a photograph of a smile. How inspiring, she said. And absolutely you're right. Of course. I mean, yes. When they asked a second time, because envy is never done on the first pass, it was at the adults-only pool, a serene mirror surrounded by white loungers and a promise printed in script, quiet. I'd come to read and to hear my own pulse ease. Delia found me anyway. She always does when she needs something. She sat without asking. It's just that we've been budgeting carefully for this trip, she murmured, glancing around to make sure her voice carried to exactly no one. The kids wanted the dolphin excursion. Roy promised Tasha the photography class. We thought your ticket credit might help. And now you're in the, what did you call it? Mariner's Villa. What is it you're asking? I said, because clarity is an act of mercy. She opened and closed her hands. I suppose I'm asking if you could share. You have so much. Look at this place. We're crammed into a room with a view of the laundry line. And whose choice was that? I asked. She colored. Roy booked late. The island didn't leave me, I said. You did. Her eyes glistened, and for a heartbeat I saw my sister the way I did when we were 8, and she'd brought me blueberries stolen from Mrs. Garcia's bushes, remorseful, cherishing, hopeful. Then she blinked, and the adult armor slid back into place. You're being uncharitable, she said quietly. You always have to win. The only person I'm competing with, I said, is the woman who almost let herself become furniture. That night, I let the staff light a path of candles down to the water and set up a table where I could put my feet in the sand. I invited Nina, who had flown in on a later flight, and ran into Delia in the lobby. Ma, she squealed, flinging herself into the chair beside me. You maniac. You beautiful, sane maniac. I'm proud of you. Sit, I said, pressing a warm roll into her palm. Eat. Tell me everything your boss did wrong and then what you did right. We talked until the candles melted into little moons. Nina watched the waves as if they were speaking a language she'd forgotten she knew. You look lighter, she said finally. I put down a lot. Delia's fuming. Delia's capable of introspection, I said. She just prefers decorations. Mateo arrived with dessert. Bowls of yuzu sorbet that tasted like sunshine had decided to have a second career. The chef felt philosophical, he said, setting down a third bowl. For your sister if she comes. Or for a storm. Delia did not come. But a storm did, one of those island tempests that arrives like a drummer deciding to start the song early. The rain hammered for an hour, then retired to mutter somewhere over the horizon. In the morning the island had the nerve to be more beautiful. On day 3, Tasha knocked on my door with a note from Delia, folded 4 times like a schoolgirl plea. Aunt V, it read in my sister's tidy, anxious print. Can we talk? Alone. Please. I met her on the bridge over the koi pond where fish played at being treasures. She looked smaller than the day before, as if the hotel sheets had shrunk her. I didn't want to grow old, she said without preamble. When I look at you, I see the map, and it scares me. That is not an excuse for what I did. But it is the truth. The truth is, I thought if I kept you in a tidy box, I'd never have to open my own. You could have said that, I said. I don't know how to ask for what I need without making it your problem, she said. I'm sorry. The sorry sat on the bridge between us. It rocked a little, then steadied. She reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in tissue, my passport holder. I took it out of your purse the night before we left, she said, shame turning her voice into someone else's. I thought if it was missing, you wouldn't fight us. Roy told me it was wrong. I told him it was practical. She swallowed. You can call me anything you like. I deserve it. I like my words clean, I said. They harm less and hit harder. What you did was cruel. And you're not a cruel person. That's the part that should alarm you. She nodded so fast the fish looked up. I will fix it. I don't know how yet, but I will. Start by telling the truth, I said. Tell the kids. Tell Roy. Tell yourself. And then stop narrating my life like a cautionary tale. She took a breath. Can I ask one thing? We booked the dolphin excursion for tomorrow, but we couldn't afford the underwater photographer. Tasha's been dreaming of those pictures for months. She stopped. No. I'm not going to ask you to pay. I'm going to ask you if you'd come. Tasha will never forget swimming with dolphins with her great-aunt who refused to be left behind. It was the first clean request she'd made in years. Yes, I said. On one condition. What? You stop calling me old like it's the end of the sentence. She smiled through tears. Deal. The dolphins came like notes in music you don't realize you know by heart. They sliced the water, turned shiny black eyes on us, and vanished only to reappear with a flick that felt like a joke at the expense of gravity. Tasha screamed and then laughed and then cried, and I did too, because joy ignores dignity when dignity gets in its way. Even Roy softened. He floated on his back like a man surrendering to a story bigger than his budget and whispered, "Okay. Okay." We took the photo. It sits now on my bookshelf at home, me in a blue rash guard, hair slicked back, one dolphin nose tapped gently against my palm, Tasha beaming so hard she looks like she swallowed the moon. Delia stands behind us, also smiling, really smiling, with the corners crinkled and everything, because she is finally participating instead of placing. Word spread. The woman who'd been left behind was the same one you now saw at sunrise on the bluff, with a camera big enough to count wings. Ms. Vera, the yoga instructor, called as I passed the open-air pavilion. "Join us? First class is on me." I bend like a door hinge, I warned. "Then we'll oil the hinge," she said. I went. I wobbled. I laughed. Afterwards, Mateo appeared with a tray of cinnamon water, because apparently that's a thing. "You are," he said, "dangerously good at being the main character." "I'm trying not to let it go to my head." "Let it," he said. "You've stored enough modesty to power a village." On the last night, the resort hosted a beach cinema. A white screen trembled between two palms. People sprawled on beanbags and lounge chairs, wrapped in soft blankets. A man with a lantern wandered among us like an usher from a dream, offering roasted nuts and a smile large enough to be a currency. The movie didn't matter. What mattered was the moment before the film started, when the lights dimmed and everyone's attention drifted toward anticipation. Delia chose that moment to stand in the great soft dark and clear her throat. "Excuse me," she said, and her voice carried just enough to be heard by every face she recognized and every face she didn't. "I need to say something to my family. And, because I am very good at performing, I'm going to do it in front of strangers so I don't back out." Roy started to tug her wrist. She shook him off. "I took Vera's passport before our trip," she said, and little sighs rippled in the sand like tiny waves. "I did it because I thought she couldn't handle travel anymore, and because I didn't want to handle my own fear. I'm ashamed. I'm sorry. I'm returning it with every apology I own." She turned toward me, eyes wide open the way they rarely are. "Vera, you were going to give us a car. You chose to give yourself this instead. That was the right decision. I'm going to spend the rest of this year learning to give without stealing first." Roy stood, too, because that's who he is when someone else sets the tone. "I didn't stop her," he said. "Vera, I'm sorry. We're better than that. We will do better than that." You could feel the resort audience root for what was happening like a good scene in a film. The quiet, the way it hooked you, the hope that the next line would land. Somewhere behind us, a child whispered, "She's brave." Somewhere to my left, a woman who'd told me she was 49 took her husband's hand. The sea hummed. "Thank you," I said simply. Apology accepted. Boundary noted. The movie started. On the screen, a character took a risk that looked a lot like my seaplane rising over blue. Someone cheered quietly at a part that didn't need cheering, but perhaps their life did. Tasha eventually fell asleep with her head on my lap. Delia rested her cheek on Roy's shoulder and looked, for the first time in a long time, like a person who understood she did not need to win to remain seen. On the last morning, I woke before dawn and walked to the water. The island inhaled. Birds negotiated the terms of their morning. A fisherman pushed off with oars that didn't splash, only persuaded. I thought of my house back home, quiet and waiting. The porch where I'd waved as they left me. The little index card that had saved me from behaving small. Mateo met me on the path back to the villa with a paper bag. "For the plane," he said. Inside were 2 passion fruit tarts. "The recipe says the secret is patience." I thought you'd enjoy ignoring that step. "I have ignored worse," I said. "Thank you. Will you come back?" he asked. "Yes," I said. But not because I need to prove anything. Because I like the way this place talks to me. At checkout, Delia tried a last performance of practicality. "You don't need to tip everyone," she said, watching me tuck envelopes into palms with names I had made the effort to learn. "The service charge covers it." "I am not tipping," I said lightly. "I am thinking." We took the ferry together, because that felt small and kind. On the dock, Tasha hugged me so hard my bones took notes. "You're the coolest grandma," she whispered. No offense to my future grandma self. "None taken," I said. "Outdo me." At the airport, Leo met us at arrivals, hair messy, smile wide. He took my bag without asking and kissed my forehead. "Legend," he said again. Nina came barreling after him with a bouquet of supermarket flowers she'd ripped the plastic off in the parking lot. "For the woman who decided to be the plot twist," she said. Delia approached with my passport in her outstretched hand. "I don't deserve to carry this," she said. "Not yet." "You do deserve to carry your own fear," I said. "Try it. It's lighter than mine." We hugged, and it was the kind that is both beginning and apology. Roy mumbled about changing the oil and then said aloud what he should have said days ago. "We love you, Vera. We forget to show it. We'll fix that." That night, back in my small kitchen with its gleaming jar of knitting needles and the refrigerator magnet that reads "No" as a complete sentence, I stood at the counter and wrote 2 lists. One was labeled us. It had practical things on it. Call the roofer, take Leo to lunch where he won't insist on paying, ask Nina to teach me how to use that fancy photo app, walk with Delia twice a week even if we mostly complain about mosquitoes. The other list was labeled me. It had a helicopter ride over Red Rock Canyons and a salsa class and a library card renewal and a lemon tree for the yard. At the bottom I wrote, underlined, passion fruit tart lesson. The next weekend, Delia came over with a bag of figs and that awkward, eager energy that says I am trying to be new. We sat on the porch and didn't talk about the island at first. We talked about the neighbor's ridiculous rooster and the price of peaches and then, finally, the passport. She looked me in the eye. "Thank you for not making me bleed for it," she said. "I didn't say it wouldn't cost you," I replied. "You owe me Thursdays. Coffee, and we do not discuss anyone who isn't in the room." "You're on," she said. "Also." "Yes. I've been pricing cars," she said, grimacing at her own audacity. "Not for us. For the community center. They've got volunteers burning their own gas. I want to do one good thing that's inconvenient for me." Now that, I said, and had to swallow emotion like a pill, sounds expensive in all the right ways. Sometimes revenge is an apology you never get around to needing because you outgrew the version of yourself who demanded it. Sometimes it's a seat you take because it's yours. Sometimes it's a tart you eat with both hands. Mine was all of the above, and one thing more, it was a sentence I refused to end with the word old. I kept my promise to myself. I booked a little cabin on the coast where the fog creeps in like a neighbor who knows your best stories. I took the train alone and watched America go by in fields and water towers, a ribbon of ordinary threaded through. I bought a ridiculous sun hat from a shop where the owner called me Queen without irony. I danced in my kitchen when the bread rose just right. I sent postcards to my grandchildren that read, "Grandma is busy. Write back when you can." And yes, I saved the photo of us with the dolphins as my phone background, not because I needed proof I'd done something brave, but because some days you need to remember you can be in a picture without having to hold the camera. Delia still makes mistakes. So do I. We always will. But when she starts to slip into telling me what I can't do, I lift my glass, smell the ocean that lives in my memory now, and say, "We both know I can fly." People ask me how I paid for that vacation, as if there must be a trick, a lottery, a man. I tell them the truth, the way I told it to Delia at the restaurant while the waiter stood there rooting for me with his brave smile. I was going to give my family a new car. I'd changed my mind. I'd rather spend it on myself. And if anyone calls that petty, I smile and correct them. It's not petty. It's precise. Now go on. Tell me where you're listening from. And if you're thinking of canceling yourself out of something because someone told you you're already old, book the flight. Take the seaplane. Order the tart. Wear the hat. Be the story that spoils its own middle, because the ending is better when you make it yourself. The week after I returned, the phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. It was the resort's general manager, a woman named Clarice who sounded like someone who could sort a hurricane with a clipboard. "Miss Vera," she said warmly. Mateo gave me a quiet report. "I wanted to thank you for being the guest who learns our people's names. It's rarer than it should be." "I was the one who was thanked," I said. "He convinced a tart to save me twice." She laughed. If you ever decide to return, I'll make sure the telescope is polished and the hammock rescued from the boys who keep pretending it's a pirate ship. I considered telling her that the hammock had held me on a morning when my doubts pitched like that same ship. Instead, I asked if the resort ever partnered with reading programs on the island. I have an idea, I said. It involves books and shade and lemonade with too much ice. By Friday, I had a plan, a tiny library under a huge almond tree in the village we'd passed on the way from the dock. I called Nina, who knows how to make ideas into invitations. She built a flyer, got a business to print it, convinced 3 friends to donate children's books, and shamed me, in a loving way, into recording a little video asking for gently used paperbacks. "You're good on camera," she said. "Tell them the part where you were left and then not left." I did. I filmed it in my kitchen with the Lemon Tree catalog taped to the wall for cheer, and I spoke plainly. How being called old felt like being put in the wrong room, how I put myself in the right one, how the island had fed me, and I wanted to feed it back with stories. I kept the hook clean, the edges sharp, the middle spoiled just enough to make people listen. The video did what videos sometimes do, it grew legs. Boxes started to appear on my porch. Notes slipped into them like bookmarks. For the girl who called the carp in the koi pond gold coins, may she become rich in words. From a teacher who said she'd retired too early and wanted to help build shelves. From a boy who sent his favorite book because he said it had taught him to be brave in small rooms. Delia came over every Thursday as promised. The first Thursday, she brought croissants and an apology that wasn't tired at the edges. The second, she brought Roy and a spreadsheet that made me laugh because it was so serious it practically saluted. The third, she brought a bucket of paint and a T-shirt she didn't mind ruining. We set up planks across sawhorses in my driveway and painted them the color of the sky you get on a very lucky morning. "Why this shade?" she asked. "Because it's greedy," I said. "It wants to be everything all at once, blue, silver, possible." We loaded the shelves, labeled the bins, and packed a suitcase full of bookmarks knitted from leftover yarn. The airport staff did not know what to do with 2 women in matching paint-splattered shirts and 1 large bag that rattled like a quiet parade. "Art supplies," I told them. "Books. Good intentions." They waved us through like accomplices. Clarice met us at the dock herself, Mateo a step behind with a grin that could have been bottled and sold as courage. We set up the tiny library under the almond tree with children gathering like birds, the shade busy with whispers. Delia arranged the picture books in a neat arc and then ruined her arrangement on purpose because Tasha had texted to say rules keep kids from touching. I read aloud to 3 little boys who kept correcting my shark facts. Roy tried not to cry when a girl took a book and hugged it like a pet. We left the suitcase behind with a note tucked in the inner pocket. Add to this. Write your names in the back of your favorites. Recommend. Disagree kindly. The island would care for the library better than any of us could from afar. Back home, I joined a walking club that met at dawn by the lake, mostly women who'd been told one too many times to slow down. We did not slow down. We marched like a decision. A retired judge, 2 nurses, a florist, a barista who wrote poems on coffee sleeves. We told the truth more often than not. When I told them about the passport and the island and the tart that kept winning, the judge nodded once and said, "That's precedent." The florist brought me a vine cutting wrapped in damp paper towels and said, "For the lemon tree you're obviously going to buy." The barista handed me a sleeve with a sentence scribbled in pen, "You can be the story and still keep your privacy." I wrote a letter to my grandchildren from the bench where the ducks argued about everything. I told them I would teach them how to pack a suitcase in under 10 minutes and how to say no without choking on it, and that if anyone called them old before they were ready, they should reply, "You have mistaken patina for rust." I told them the dolphins sounded like laughter underwater if you quieted your own long enough to hear them. Delia stumbled once, twice. She canceled a Thursday because she was swamped and, when I didn't scold her, called back 10 minutes later and said, "That was a lie. I was scared of seeing you and having to be brave again." She came anyway. We sat in the kitchen and didn't fix each other, only listened, which is harder. She admitted she had looked up the cost of my villa and had to put her phone down and breathe. I admitted I had done the same with her apology. We laughed not because it was funny, but because it was true. On a sleepy Sunday, Roy knocked with a box. Didn't want to make a fuss, he said, shoulders trying to be smaller than his regret. Delia and I sold the extra truck. We put some of it toward the community center's van. The rest, we wanted to give you for your next trip. I closed the box without peeking. No, I said softly. Take me to the hardware store instead. We're buying lumber. The little free pantry by the bus stop is falling apart. I'm building a new one that a storm will think twice about. He smiled then, not his barbecue smile, but the one that shows up when he is unperformed. Deal, he said. Teach me to measure twice. I started baking again because it calmed the house. I made the passion fruit tart until I could do it without thinking, which was dangerous, so I switched to citrus pies that required one more lemon than the recipe asked for and an extra 10 minutes of patience I didn't have. I left half a pie on Nina's doorstep when she was working late. I handed a slice to Leo in the hospital lobby where I wasn't supposed to have food. He ate it in 3 bites and said, "That's malpractice, Ma, because now I need more." The video kept traveling. Women wrote to say they had unpacked and repacked their husbands' words and found their own tucked underneath. Men wrote to say they had failed their mothers and would like to unfail them. A teenager filmed her great-grandmother showing how to tie a scarf and tagged me. I recognized the knot. People wanted to know the name of the island, the resort, the exact path to the bluff, but I didn't tell them because some places don't like to be named by strangers. I told them about the almond tree and the water that looks like forgiveness. One afternoon, Delia and I drove to the community center to see the van she'd been working on as if it were a science project. It was practical and not pretty, which made me like it more. The director, a woman with a laugh that made you straighten up, told us they'd be using it to shuttle seniors to a walking path in the park. It's funny, she said, wiping her hands on a towel. People forget you can age without becoming cargo. The next time we went to the beach, we brought folding chairs and a promise to keep our judgments to ourselves for 2 hours. We lasted 40 minutes, which was a record. Delia pointed out a family arguing over a cooler. That used to be us, she said. I would bark orders like a drill sergeant. You would smooth it over like a diplomat. We called that balance. It was laziness. Now we take turns, I said. You can drill for 10 minutes. Then I can smooth for 5. We shook on it. We did not keep it. We had more fun trying. When Ocean's Azure emailed to say the tiny library under the almond tree needed more books about the sea because the Shark Fact boys had converted a dozen children into marine biologists, I smiled and put the word out. A fisherman back home came by with a stack of dog-eared magazines and a promise to send more. The barista wrote a poem on a sleeve about currents and choices. The retired judge donated a set of field guides with her notes in the margins. Precedent, she said again, handing them over like a gavel. I went back to the island in the fall because I could, because I wanted to see the almond tree hold more names, because the hammock had learned my weight. I booked the same villa, and when the door swung open, it felt like a room had remembered me. Mateo had left a small envelope on the table with my name in his careful hand. Inside was a photograph, the sunset bleeding gold, my silhouette leaning against the rail, the horizon performing for no one but itself. On the back he'd written, "For the woman who stopped rehearsing." The second time, I did things I'd skipped. The night snorkel where the reef glowed like a city, the cooking class where dumplings were pinched like tiny purses, the early ferry to the market where you could buy bread hot enough to scald your doubt. I took the photography class with Tasha and learned that light is a mood you can invite, not a luck you have to beg for. One evening, after a day spent almost entirely in water, I returned to the villa and found Clarice waiting with a look that could fix a policy. We had a situation at check-in, she said, leading with the problem like a professional brave person. A guest who believes the world is his valet insisted that a certain older woman could not possibly have reserved this villa without assistance. Mateo told him politely that the older woman not only booked it herself, she is also our favorite anarchist. We would like your permission to put that on a t-shirt. You'll have to define anarchist, I said. Someone who rearranges the furniture of expectation, she said. In that case, I replied, yes. Put it on the back. Delia joined me midweek with a suitcase that had learned from mistakes and a heart she was still learning to carry. We didn't recreate the first trip, we built a second one. We went to the quiet pool and didn't talk for an hour, a record we will not break. We tried stand-up paddleboarding and fell in 3 different directions, laughing so hard the instructor nearly needed rescue. We wrote letters to the women we used to be and left them under a stone by the path to the bluff. We ate tarts slowly enough to remember them later. On our last night, there was another beach cinema. The screen trembled between the palms, the lantern man made his rounds, and a hush settled like a blanket that had been laundried in the ocean. A woman across the aisle stood to make a speech and changed her mind. She sat back down, took her companion's hand, and leaned her head on his shoulder. Not every apology needs a microphone. Sometimes it needs only an ear. When I got home, I finally bought the lemon tree. I planted it by the porch where the sun knows to linger. It has not fruited yet. It will. I read somewhere that lemon trees take their time, that they like to make sure you're serious. I am. In the spring, the walking club decided to attempt a charity 10K. We trained as if we were going to war with our own assumptions. The barista designed t-shirts with a dolphin jumping over a stopwatch and the words "Make it happen" in the middle, which none of us could quite explain, but all of us understood. The retired judge set a pace that embarrassed us lovingly. Delia stood at the finish line in a hat she'd finally gotten dirty and held a sign that read, "Older is an upgrade." We finished without drama, which felt like its own headline. Every so often, someone still asks me about the money. The car that didn't happen. The luxury of it all. I tell them the math without apology, a certain number of miles and a certain number of years, and the interest on a life that had gone unpaid too long. I tell them how it felt to shift a gift from many to one, and how that one turned out to be not just me, but also a girl under an almond tree and a sister on a paddleboard and a florist who decided to stay open an extra hour because the late light was pretty. The family car appeared anyway, in a way I could love. The community center van shuttles people to places they would have skipped, a dentist, a park, a class, a path. The driver keeps a log of good news at the end of each route. Sometimes he calls to read it to me. Mrs. L learned how to use her phone's map. Mr. A went to the art museum for the first time. Lila took the long way home because the jacarandas were showing off. It is a better car than the one I would have bought. It carries what needs carrying. Delia has stopped calling me old the way people say, unfortunately. She says it now the way you might say, finally. We are practicing seeing one another without squinting. She still tries to fix things that aren't hers, and I still try to forgive in advance. We catch each other sooner. We laugh at ourselves faster. Sometimes we are tired and say the wrong thing and then the right one. When I think about the beginning, the white gloves by the plunge pool, the gaping from the budget wing, the word old dropped like a verdict, I don't feel the heat behind my ribs anymore. I feel the cool of that coconut water and the way my name sounded when the island said it back to me. I feel the steadiness of a decision that was long overdue. I feel the middle of the story, spoiled just enough to save me. If this finds you at a kitchen table with a stack of reasons you can't, consider this your permission slip signed by someone who lived long enough to know there isn't a gatekeeper you can't build a gate around. Book the thing. Pack the scarf. Learn the tart. And when they ask you how you paid for a joy that looks like too much, tell them you rerouted a gift you were about to give away. Tell them you spent it on yourself and it multiplied. I was going to give my family a new car. I changed my mind. I'd rather spend it on myself. And, to the sister who loves me in a way that used to feel like a checklist, we are learning each other again. You left me once, and then you met me where I was, and both acts changed us. It turns out the most expensive room on the island comes with a view of everyone you love standing somewhere they can finally see you, and that, more than the plunge pool or the cello or the tart, is what I paid for, and what I would pay for again.
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video, like and subscribe. Bye bye!